What is up, y'all? If you're new here, hi, hello, welcome, hey. My name is Sydney Rain, and we just live in life over here. And I thought I'd share 3 books today that I have been really enjoying lately when it comes to herbalism and just refreshing myself on herbal knowledge and getting inspired when it comes to studying herbalism and incorporating it into my life and in my practices. So for a little background about me, I have been studying herbalism since the dawn of time. I feel like I always try to say when I started studying herbalism, and I never actually know when it was. So if you've heard me in the past say something that contradicts what I'm saying right now, no, you didn't. It's been 3 years since I started studying herbalism. And since that point, I've done a lot of things to continue to immerse myself in this world and to continue to learn and to study herbs. And I've done that a couple different ways. It started off as research online and articles, and then I started buying books, and then eventually I took a course. I have an entire herb shelf behind me. So that's something that's there that is always readily available for me to experiment with. But truthfully, when it comes to studying herbalism, books have been a staple part of this journey for me. It's also where I go when I feel like I need a little bit of inspiration, and they really just help me keep this practice relevant in my life. And so I thought I'd share 3 that I have been enjoying more recently. These are books that I've had for a while, but I feel like when it comes to the way that a lot of these herbal books are structured, it's really easy to revisit these books and learn something new or pick something up that you might have forgotten. And I honestly think that's what I genuinely love about herbal books and that form of learning in particular, because each book generally has its own unique voice based off the author. But if it is a good herbal book, it always provides that baseline of information. And it's a great way to refresh yourself on vocabulary. And obviously, as far as properties are concerned with herbs, most of them should have a relatively similar description of each herb, but sometimes it's nice, depending on the book, to see what is emphasized about a particular herb, especially because most of these herbs are synergetic. They work in a lot of different ways, and many of them have multiple purposes and uses. So depending on the book that you're reading, they might emphasize a particular therapeutic benefit over another. And so I feel like I'm rambling, but it's just a great way to refresh yourself and get inspired and remind yourself how vast this world is. So here are the books in question. First, I wanted to talk about this book right here. This is The New American Herbal by Stephen Orr. 2 of these books, by the way, are 2 books that I came across while at a bookstore. I always love to check out the health and wellness section just because I always find something that catches my eye, and that's mainly how I've grown this library. And then one of these books, which is right here, and we'll talk about it later, was given to me by a friend who was also studying herbalism. So one thing that I love about this book and why I've been loving it recently is because this book was a great reminder that herbalism does not always have to be so serious. I think one thing about the world of herbalism is putting your wellness first and bringing back more autonomy into your own health. And that's why I got into herbalism. But also, sometimes it's nice to remember that there are so many other uses for these herbs that simply go past what they can do for you. And in a lot of ways, some of these herbs are just meant to be enjoyed and experienced. And I think this book is a great example on how you could bring some of that creativity and play into your practice. Also, look at this. I think the thing that attracted me to this book was definitely the pictures. It is just a very aesthetic book. It is beautiful, and it has a huge A to Z list of herbs in the back, which I'll get to in a moment. But one thing that I love about this book is it is a complete guide. So in this handbook, it has herb basics, herbal preparations, garden projects, kitchen projects, and specialty herbs. And I think that's really great because it gives you an opportunity to have a really well-rounded approach and perspective to herbs and herbalism. Some of the books that I have definitely speak to a very specific audience or have the intention to reach a specific crowd. I feel like for this handbook, it is pretty neutral, and I think it's beneficial to anyone. I think all these books are beneficial to anyone, but obviously you could definitely tell there's a preference or a bias within the writing. One thing that I really like about this book as well is it goes into specialty herbs, which essentially it just touches on different herbs within different cultures. And specifically for the New American Herbal, of course, it has a pretty solid breakdown on Native American herbs as well, which I think is really cool, especially because living in Washington, a lot of these herbs I was actually familiar with. Washington is one of the most edible states in the US. There's a very big population of native, edible, medicinal, and eating plants and herbs that live here. So it was kind of cool, especially because last year I learned a lot about the native plant life here and a little bit about their medicinal properties. But after reading some of these descriptions, I still had so much I didn't know about a lot of the plants that I was already familiar with. So I thought that was super cool, and I think it's always great when herbal books, especially if they're centering, North American herbalism, take time to actually speak about native traditions and really provide a platform for that. Apart from that, I think this book is a really great way to slowly introduce yourself to using these herbs and consuming them. And I say that just because sometimes it could be a little daunting to jump into herbalism and learn about all these herbs and what they can do for you, and get a little bit overwhelmed about where to start and how to kind of like introduce yourself to integrating herbs into your life. And I must say that this book provides a couple of very delicious recipes. And not only that, but it definitely takes the pressure off of feeling like you need to get herbs that immediately start healing you. This is not to say that that is not extremely important. If that is what you're looking for, then 100% I think you should find books that really speak to that. But I think one thing that's cool about this book is it definitely invites you to be creative in the ways that you integrate herbs into your life. And I feel like it really just makes herbalism and herbs extremely approachable. One part of this book though that I haven't gotten into is the gardening aspect, just because I don't really live in a space right now where I feel like I could have an herb garden. I have cats that love to eat everything that is green and alive, and I don't really have an outside space that I feel like would make sense to have an outside herb garden. So that is something that I am currently manifesting for the future. We will see. For me, this book was just a great reminder that you can have fun with herbalism and you can experiment, and there are just so many ways that you can work with herbs. Okay, so the second book that I want to show you today is a little more specific. I will say it's Natural Woman by Dr. Leslie Korn. Herbal remedies for radiant health at every age and stage of life. So, if you are someone of a womb-bearing body, I highly recommend this book to you. Just like New American Herbal, it has a really great breakdown on vocabulary and herbs. And I think one thing that is great about this book is it is a little more specific. So a lot of the herbs in here are herbs that have to do or benefit our body's natural cycles, whether it is internal or even external, because the weather impacts us and there's so many outside factors that impact what's going on internally. So this book really speaks to that, and it provides a lot of guides, and I think that's something that's really unique and beautiful about this book. I'm going to read the table of contents for this one as well, just because I feel like that's a great way to just summarize what's going on in the book. So we have how herbs heal, preparing your herbal medicines, tools and methods, herbal medicines for everyday use and special purposes, spice medicine, which is one of my favorite, spirit plants guiding the goddess within, also a banger, and then it has herbal medicines for life cycles, health and disease, and herbal rituals. I would say compared to the American Herbal, it's definitely a little more dense. I think one thing about this book specifically too is Dr. Korn incorporates a lot of their own family traditions within this book as well. I believe that they are Jewish, so a lot of Jewish traditions and things that they learned from their grandmother are in this book, which I find that for me, herbs have always been a great way to connect with others and their culture. And so I love to see that in books, just because that's how cultures live on and that's how these traditions are passed down. So I love to consume books that center tradition and culture and carry on that legacy. Now, I will say one thing that is a little difficult about this book is I feel like there's a lot of recipes and things that are just like sprinkled in throughout the chapters. I've tried to go back and find certain things and it can be a little hard, I will say. So I feel like this is definitely a book where you can't just open it and kind of like pick through and pick and choose what you want to get out of it. I feel like this book is best utilized when you thoroughly go through it and you really just take it in completely. If I were you when you get this book, I would also take sticky notes and I would mark things, just because I've had trouble myself going back and trying to reference things that I had read. And I think I specifically got this book because as far as specific topics are concerned within herbalism, one thing that I was really interested and drawn to was reproductive health. And so this book has a lot about reproductive health. Let me just read it. Depression, anxiety, reproductive health, migraines, menstrual issues, birthing, thyroid health, weight issues, libido, fibroids, sleep, allergies, arthritis, and other health issues. So that is right up my alley. A lot of these topics are things that I personally had an interest in before even finding this book. So it's always great to find books that are also just specifically aligned with what you're interested in. Especially if you are going into herbalism with a very specific purpose, it can be really hard to sort through books like The New American Herbal. While that's a great, well-rounded approach to herbal medicine, this is a lot more specific and will likely provide you with those answers you may need sooner than later, with half of the trouble sorting through and really looking for what you're trying to find. And then finally, we have Working the Roots, Over 400 Years of Traditional African American Healing by Michele E. Lee. Not gonna lie, y'all, this book has a very special place in my heart. One thing that I immediately noticed when I got into studying herbalism, specifically through the course that I took, it was an online course, is that there is not a lot of work done on African and Black American herbalism. That is not a surprise, obviously, but I just remember going through that course and they had a whole chapter dedicated to different traditions and cultures and how herbal medicine played a role in their society. And I just remember reading, and I think there was literally only one sentence that spoke about the papyrus scrolls from ancient Egypt. And essentially all it said about that was they stole that information, I think, from, they sent a screenshot of the little chapter. And if not, I'm gonna find it and I'm gonna show y'all the screenshot, because I just remember reading that and being so upset, because I just remember sitting there and thinking, bitch, Africa is the birthplace of humanity. What the freak do you mean that you have nothing to tell me about African herbal traditions and how that shaped their society? To me, that feels like erasure. We all know how they be treating our people. So after realizing how Eurocentric that course was, I still continued to go through it because there was a lot of great information about herbs, and it really was the foundation for my herbal information. But it definitely ignited that flame to learn more about Afrocentric herbalism, and within that, African American herbalism. So this book to me is invaluable. And since then, I've actually found a lot of both in-person and online courses that do center Indigenous knowledge, and I've come across a lot of courses that decenter Eurocentric thinking when it comes to herbalism. And so I plan to make another video talking about these resources, how I find them, and the best way to go about finding an herbal program that works for you. But I have talked about this book so many times, and every time I talk about it, someone new says that they're so grateful that they came across this video and they really connect with this book and they're definitely adding it to the list. And so many more on top of that, talking about how this book changed their life, how much they love this book. And for that reason, I will never ever stop talking about this book. So what makes this book so invaluable and amazing and beautiful? It tells real stories, and I cannot emphasize enough the impact this book has on me, because I'm someone that didn't come from a family that taught me these things. A lot of the stories and traditions are from Deep South and Southern Black culture, and I'm from California. My family is from up north. Regardless, this is not a world that my family openly exists in. I come from a background of missionaries and preachers and that kind of spiritual world, but I never had a grandmother that taught me medicinal medicine and tricks and traditions of the culture and how they took care of themselves, took care of their crop and their well-being back when they didn't have the luxury of going to a doctor or Western medicine and all of the things that we now have grown accustomed to. So for me, this book provided a lot of context for an aspect of Black culture that I never really got to experience growing up. And what I love about this is the stories are front and center, and all the stories don't necessarily have to do with herbalism. If anything, this is a beautiful compilation of Michele's family and friends in the South and documenting the experiences and stories of an older generation. It really just shows the magic and power that exists in Black American culture and the Black community, and a true example of what life used to look like, and how we've always been in touch with nature, how there's never been a disconnect, and how we've always relied on the world around us to support us and take care of us, and vice versa. So if I haven't sold the book to you yet, buy the damn book. I don't know, I have nothing else to say. Let's go to the table of contents. So the book is broken into two parts, and then it has chapters. So the first part is healing narratives, and that is essentially when lead travels throughout the South, visiting family and friends, and just taking the time to learn their stories, to immerse themselves in their lifestyle and their culture and memories, and really just create a beautiful work of art with that alone. And then the second part, of course, is the ailments and medicines. That's when you go more into, I guess, the herbalism side. It has preventative health, which I think is a great thing to touch on. And then it goes into the standard medicines, specific conditions, which is also great. It has a great breakdown between masculine and feminine issues and just a whole bunch of just random stuff, I will say. Not random, but just like extremely niche and specific, which I think is actually really cool about this book. It touches a little bit on animal care as well. There's a lot of rural and ag culture within the stories of these folks as well, so I thought that was really cool to include, as well as the medicines, which is basically just a breakdown on a whole bunch of herbs. Also, something that I think is beautiful in this book as well is chapter 9 is working the powers, conjure, and hoodoo remedies, which if you're someone who can rightfully practice that, I think this is a great chapter. I actually haven't gotten to it yet. I am taking my time getting through this book, and I think a part of me doesn't even want to fully get through this book just because I want to live in this experience forever. But I've decided that I do want to work through this book and really just finish it because it's mine, it's here, it's not going anywhere. So I'm super excited to actually get to this chapter just because I haven't even gotten to it yet. And in the past, I've gone into hoodoo a little bit. I will say that world kind of scares me. And I understand hoodoo is completely about intention, and I'm not someone of bad intentions, but I just have a weird past with the spiritual world, and I've just, some strange things have happened to me that have just spooked me beyond belief. And so I feel like every time I get into that world, something happens that sobers me right on up, and I'm like, you know what? Like, we choose to close our eyes, we choose to not see, which is so bad. That's so bad. Like, I wish I was someone that can just willfully explore those gifts. And yeah, I don't want to scare you all away, so I'm not going to get into it. But yeah, if that's something that you're interested in, you feel a connection to that, there are some great chapters on that as well, and a little bit of cycles, timing cycles, moon phases, and all that stuff. So this is just, like I said 20 million times, invaluable. This book was gifted to me back when I lived in Fresno. Someone that I was introduced to, I guess, working with through another project that I had done, offered to get this book for me because they were buying a copy for themselves, and that quite literally changed the entire directory for my life. This was right at the beginning of my herbalism journey. This was at the beginning of opening an herbal shop, and just like, herbs changed my life. I'm always in awe of Black American culture, our roots, and the elasticity that exists within our being here and what we've accomplished and done. So yeah, I'm gonna never ever stop talking about this book. That is Working the Roots, and that is the final book that I have been loving. So yes, that is it. We have the New American Herbal, Natural Woman, and Working the Roots. All of these books provide context and value in their own specific ways, and each one of these books has a really true and genuine voice. That's why I wanted to share these with y'all today. And if you've already started to grow your herbal library, I think these are great additions, and I also think that these are great starting points for anyone on their journey. As much as I think it's important that you find books that speak to you and who you're interested in, I think it's also important to own all of these books regardless. If you're not someone of African or Black descent, I still think it's important for you to read this history and read this culture and immerse yourself, because how else are we going to connect and form bridges and create empathy towards each other? If you are someone who doesn't identify as a woman, or you don't have a womb-bearing body, I still think it's important to invest in natural women. I think there's probably someone in your life that does identify with this book and would really benefit from you taking the time to immerse yourself in their cycles and the things that they're going through. And as for the New American Herbal, it is across the board a great handbook that I think provides value to anyone. And so all of these books are extremely special to me, and I just wanted to share that with you today. That is all I have to say, so thank you so much for watching, and if you haven't already, please do not forget to like and subscribe. If you have any questions, or if there's anything specific about herbalism that you want me to touch on and talk about, I don't necessarily feel like I am ready to be in a position where I talk about specific ailments and herbs for those things, just because it is so much more than having an issue and throwing an herb at it. And so that is not the direction that I want this content to go in, but I am more than happy to provide resources, to provide general knowledge and practices that I personally have experience with. So still throw them out there, because you never know. And I've included, of course, all the titles and the authors to these 3 books in the description below, as well as hopefully some free resources for all 3 of these books. I find a lot of free PDFs on Easy Library, I believe. But other than that, that is all I have for you today. As always, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, happy healing. All right, I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye!